The Own Your Intuitive podcast is for the creatives, spiritual entrepreneurs, and light workers in the world. The shining ones who have been told to dim their light and stop believing in magic. I say screw that. The time to rise is now. To bring your gifts out into the world in a big way, creating a business that feeds your soul and your bank account. You are a magical being with the potential to change the world, one human at a time. The time for you to own your intuitive is now. Hello, magical beings. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are tuning in. I hope it is a glorious time of the day for you for this Transformation Tuesday. And I'm kind of excited about today's conversation because it was multiple times this week that it came up as both an idea somebody suggested to me when we were in conversation, and then it was reflected, which is part of today's conversation, at a breathwork class I did yesterday for the first time. And I could just go on a little rant here about breathwork for a second and just say, like, holy Mackinac. I had heard about breathwork. The universe had been knocking at my door about breathwork for probably a few months now, and it just never seemed to fit into the schedule or work, or I couldn't figure out the timing. And I guess between writing the third book and moving, that made sense. And now that I'm settled into my new house and my third book is done, it just was perfect timing and divine timing. And so I went to my first breathwork class with Jeff, my husband, and it was recommended by some friends of ours, Tarzan K and J. And what an experience, you guys. If you've never done breath work, we did Dharma breathing, which is into the upper register of the lung, and you breathe in. So what's the word I want to say? You focus on the inhale, deepen the high upper breath, and then you let the air fall out. Now, this is not something you practice on your own, because the experiences and the transformations and the feelings, emotions, all of these incredible things that you work through during that hour is very profound. And I can tell you that it absolutely 100% made a huge difference for me going into it, working through some residual blocks in the sacral based through trauma, knowing that, and then to feel the actual vibration shift as I could feel it kind of like activating from the crown and moving its way down, and the stuckness that I felt in my meridians and in my chakras, and being able to push through that through breath work. Like, I'm a believer now, friends. I am a believer. But it was at this Dharma breathwork class that someone had talked about mirroring. Now, mirroring in its own way is that every single person that we come in contact with is reflecting some form of ourselves back to us. That is mirroring, right? So if you are saying, that, man, you are so amazing, I just love you, that is in turn mirroring back that you are amazing and that you love you, right? There is this beautiful sense in which the good and the bad is mirrored back to us. We seem to only want to focus on, the bad reflected back. So if we're agitated, annoyed, frustrated with somebody on an action or a way in which they're doing things, then really we're annoyed with ourselves for that very thing that they are doing. Because maybe it's like, you're annoyed with your partner because they're not taking out the garbage when you ask them to, but that's probably because in your life, you are not taking ownership and doing an action when you are being asked to do it. And so you get, frustrated when you see that part of yourself reflected like a mirror in somebody else. And so you get annoyed with them. But really, let's face it, we're annoyed with ourselves. So in a premise, that is what mirroring is. And so the conversation that I had earlier in this week that kind of inspired this episode of Own Your Intuitive was the fact that I was talking about our greatest fears will always be reflected back to us. Because if we truly anchor into the fact that this is an energetic vibrational world, then we, as the human, are emitting a frequency that is constantly in action, even when our words are not in action. And so the example that I gave is I will always receive proof of my greatest fear. as you will always receive proof of your greatest fear. So subconsciously, if your greatest fear, and I'm going to give you some examples from my life because that's the only thing I can draw from here, and you can, bring it into your own life as you need it, is that, I practice A Course in Miracles with my mastermind. Like, I love A Course in Miracles. Like, it is one of the greatest practices I've ever brought into my personal life, my business life, my anything. Now, as I was studying A Course in Miracles, when I first studied it, I began studying it about 4 years ago. I did not have an attachment to God in any way, shape, or form. In the beginning of my spiritual journey, I truly had dad issues, right? So I was more reflected into like, there's a goddess, we are all come from Mother Earth and Mother Mary, and like, it's all about the birth and feminine and all those kinds of things. And even as I was studying A Course in Miracles, I was like crossing out God and writing goddess, and I was crossing out the Holy Spirit and putting, Mother Earth, and like I was really not connected as a whole being, that's for sure. But it was through the process of activating and opening and coming into my awareness of my physical body that I had the revelation that there has to be God and goddess, there has to be male and feminine, there is love and fear, there is always a dichotomy of good and bad in the world, like it just is, right? Like we have to have dark to have light, all these things, which means in this beautiful space of balance, we needed to have God and goddess, period, exclamation mark. And it was like this revelation that I had. But I was petrified to come out of the God closet because of the fact that I grew up, like I was baptized and confirmed Anglican, but I grew up in a family where, there's a little bit of mocking made to the church, Christmas carols during the Christmas service was always sung in the jesty form, like Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, Robin Laid an Egg kind of thing. So I just had this fear that I wouldn't be accepted if I came out of the God closet. And actually, I have a guest coming up on the Own Your Intuitive, which I'm really, really excited to share with you guys, because I actually asked her the question, how did you come out of the God closet when I first met her? So I'll let you know when that person is the guest, you guys, because it's a conversation that I'll have with her. But I was really scared. So my own fear was that I didn't want people to know that I believed in God because they would mock me or make fun of me because of how I felt or the reflection of what my past was. So I was emitting this frequency of fear that people would, not like have this like connection with me if I came out of the God closet. So I was talking to a client that I had she worked with me through the Chakra Business Academy and then stayed with me in my mastermind of Avalon. And she had no longer been in the program and we were just catching up and chatting. And she said these words to me when I was in my greatest fear. And she said, I loved your Chakra Business Academy, but Avalon reminded me of church. Now, again, it is an interesting conversation to have because no one said it before, no one said it after. But in that moment of my greatest fear, I was emitting a frequency, and the person that we are speaking to will always say the thing which will trigger our greatest fear thought because we are putting that vibration out into the world. So we want to get into an awareness when we're being, or we feel like people are attacking or hurting us, what it is that we are actually being, what is our part to play in that conversation? What is because we always want to take personal ownership, right? So what is it that I was like in that mindset of, or in that frequency of, or emitting in that moment to being the recipient of that? Because it was exactly what I needed to hear. Chances are, when you get your fear reflected back to you, it's almost like an aha. And I was able to see that in that moment and like sink into it and go like, well, if somebody thinks that Avalon is like church, then amen, sister, right? But I had to work through the discomfort of that comment, which was the gift in the comment. Right? And that was the growth. And it's like, in 2016, I went to Archangel Summit in September. You guys have heard me talk about it, and you will hear me talk about it 100 times over. It was just that was an event that was my transcendence. I left guilt, shame, resentment in the theater that day, and it catalyzed me moving into the Tamara you know today. Now, in that event, I saw incredible speakers up on stage, and I made this commitment that one day I was going to be in the Archangel Masters Mastermind. So fast forward only 15 months later, and it was shortly after that I became the author in 2017. And in early 2018, in February, I was like, I am the bomb. I'm going to do a whole bunch of things. I went to an event called Unfair Advantage, which was all about, public relations, getting yourself into media, all those. And I lived it. It was February and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. I had my hematite in my pocket and I was grounded and I did an exceptional job, owning my presence when I was in New York. Now, what I had decided to do, because I just made it into this master's mastermind, that was piggyback from one event to another, which, guys, that's intense for anyone if you go from event to event, because you really need to ground into who you are when you're surrounded by exceptional people, because there is a thing called comparison. It's just it just happens. But I had done really well in an Unfair Advantage, but I boarded a plane from New York to go to San Diego for this event. And it was on that plane that I started to feel like I wouldn't fit in. That I just wasn't going, these were people that I had seen on the stage when I had my transcendent experience. And now I was going to go to their houses. I was going to see them and sit at tables with them. And my psyche hadn't grown at the level that my business had grown yet. And so I started to play the game in my head. I created the fear and the judgment on myself that I wouldn't fit in. So when I get to the event in San Diego and I'm circulating and I'm doing all these things, my greatest fear was that I wouldn't fit in for a very particular reason. And that was that I've never graduated high school. I've done everything out of passion and desire and love, which is totally cool. I can own that now. But at the time I was like, I hadn't come out of that I didn't graduate high school closet either. And so I had that skeleton in that belief that if they knew that they would not respect me, support me, honor me, all these kinds of things. And I walked around in San Diego at this event and literally everybody told me their education in the hi, my name is. And you guys have to know that doesn't happen. Really think about the last time you struck up a conversation oh, hi, my name's Brian. Hi, my name's Tamara. Oh, yeah. What do you do? Oh, I studied psychology and I have my master's and my PhD and And they went on. And I was just I just felt myself completely disconnecting from my being. Truly, if I could have, I up and left my body for sure. I even went up, there was one other energy worker in the room and I walked up to him and I was like, hi, I just thought I would introduce myself to the other energy worker in the room. And no word of a lie, you guys, this is what he said to me. He was like, I studied with the monks for 8 years. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a white girl in St. Catharines in my garage. I don't belong here. That was my thought, right? Again, it's when we are reflecting back on things that we see the dots, and none of this was them. None of them. They're exceptional people and awesome and doing great work in the world. It was my fear that I was emitting as a frequency reflected back to me. That's what triggers people to say the things that they say. They are simply responding to our vibration and frequency. This is truth, and it's hard to hear sometimes because it's in that reflection that we need to do the work. This is the mirror work that we're talking about during today's episode. So again, the ownership isn't on, oh my goodness, I don't belong here. The ownership is in saying, how am I to work? What was it about that event that caused this to happen? And I was able to see the fact that because I was afraid that people wouldn't respect me from not graduating high school and I didn't think I would fit in because of it, the reflection back was to prove that fear to me. So everybody told me their education. Now I can say I'm Gary Vee up in here and saying my work in this world is not about the formal education system. And I'm so grateful for the experience at that event to open that part of me up to say with great confidence and to say and declare that the path that I took was exactly what I needed to take in order for me to serve the community and the tribe that I did. Right? And these are just two examples of how mirroring works from the perspective of the vibration of your greatest fear. So the other pieces is I want to kind of close this in a beautiful circle back to the breath work, back to, honoring when we see reflected back in ourselves the good. right? Because just as much as we take ownership of, when somebody is saying something that might feel upsetting or like an attack or hurtful, and realizing what are we in, what is our mindset and what is our frequency, and are they only reflecting that back to us? We need to be open to taking ownership of when the mirror is positive. So I know that somebody's going to be listening right now because she listens to the podcast and she is in the Chakra Business Academy right now. And I love this woman. She is 70 years old and she is in continuous work, and she is still here, striving to make the world a better place. And one of the things that I say to her all the time is, you inspire me. And I say this because I just think when I am 70 years old, you better believe I still want to be taking courses and going to events and retreats and, doing my internal work and growing to the next version and all of these things, right? But there has to be a beautiful part of that reflection, right? That she acknowledges and inhales that into her heart chakra as truth, because, we will only, again, she's emitting a frequency that I am picking up on that is reflecting that back to her, right? Because her vibration is that of, I want to help and I want to guide and I want to serve and there's work for me here. And so my personal self will say this to her as a reflection to her vibration. You inspire me. Like, I hope that, as I grow into the next levels and layers and systems and ages of my life, I still am as inspirational as you. But that is two ways here, right? My picking up her frequency, reflecting that back to her, but also realizing that I am also an inspiration, because we will only say these things if we feel them. We will only relate that in which we are already a vibrational match to. Mirror, mirror on the wall, on the other human, what are we bouncing back to ourselves? So this was a big episode, kind of talking about being open to understanding that, whatever we are saying, the other person is reflecting back to us as a mirror, due to our vibration and frequency that we are subconsciously placing out, and then the ownership of the good and the bad in our part of that reflection, right? Because we can't only lean into the bad and say, this and that in my life and do. No, we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to only sink into that hole. We want to be able to see the positive reflection. If, you are saying somebody is awesome and amazing, that's because you are mirroring awesome and amazing. You are awesome and amazing. You are inspirational. You are magnificent. You are expansive and glorious and wonderful and beautiful. And I say those things as a reflection back to myself in the true belief that I am also that, right? How cool is that? So I suppose this week, just have this beautiful awareness of the frequency of your emitting and what other people are responding and saying back to you based on that, because that is the true mirroring of energy in this glorious world that we live in. I love you guys. I hope you have an exceptional day. Please share this podcast episode with anyone that you know would get huge benefit, and know that you can always pop over to YouTube/Tamara Arnold to hear meditations, to see Tea with Tamaras, which is a live video that I do every single week, and to also have access to all podcasts in one glorious space. I love you. Have a magical day, and we shall talk on Friday with another exceptional person.